January 26, 1945, 14:20 hours. 3 kilometers behind the front line near Holtzwihr, France. Obergefreiter Klaus Dietrich, 22 years old, from Hamburg, sat against the wall of a German aid station, watching medics work frantically on men from his company, the 2nd Mountain Division's 3rd Battalion. His field notebook, discovered decades later in the Bundesarchiv, contained an entry written in shaking handwriting. 1 hour ago, we attacked with 250 men and 6 Panzer IV tanks. The objective was simple: destroy 1 American M10 tank destroyer and eliminate the officer directing their artillery fire. Intelligence reported the position lightly defended. The attack should have succeeded in minutes. I count 70 survivors. All 6 tanks burn in the snow. The American officer still lives, still calls artillery, still fires his weapon. One man. Approximately 50 casualties inflicted, personally, according to what we later learned from American broadcasts. The weapon was not a secret Wunderwaffe, not some technological marvel. It was a machine gun that entered service in 1933, 12 years ago. A weapon our intelligence dismissed as crude, mechanically simple. American factories produced nearly 2 million of them. The Browning M2, caliber .50. That American officer, First Lieutenant Audie Murphy, 20 years old, from Kingston, Texas, had climbed onto a burning tank destroyer and operated its turret-mounted machine gun for 60 minutes under direct fire from our entire company. The citation we heard about later, signed by Lieutenant General Alexander Patch, confirmed approximately 50 German casualties from Murphy alone. But Murphy's action was not unique. It was simply the most visible example of a pattern we had encountered across every theater since 1942. Dietrich survived the war. His notebook, donated to the Bundesarchiv in 1987, contains 247 pages of observations about American firepower written between June 1944 and May 1945. It is one of 1,847 similar documents, diaries, letters, interrogation reports, post-war testimonies, that collectively document what German forces discovered about the M2 Browning .50 caliber machine gun. What they discovered would fundamentally challenge their understanding of modern warfare. The Americans had not built the most sophisticated heavy machine gun. They had built something far more dangerous. The most reliable heavy machine gun, produced in overwhelming quantities. 1,933,985 units manufactured between 1933 and 1945, supplied with seemingly unlimited ammunition, approximately 47 billion rounds of all calibers produced during the war, with .50 caliber representing approximately 9 billion rounds, and employed according to Doctrine that valued sustained fire over precision. German soldiers called it Punktfunkno, .50. They recognized its distinctive sound, deeper and more deliberate than the rapid-fire chatter of German machine guns. 450 to 575 rounds per minute. Each massive half-inch diameter projectile weighing 707 grains, traveling at 2,910 feet per second, carrying 12,000 foot-pounds of muzzle energy, more kinetic energy than a 20 millimeters cannon shell, though without the explosive payload. The hatred began not with fear, but with medical evidence. Oberar's Dr. Heinrich Müller, 34 years old, from Berlin, served as senior medical officer with the 352nd Infantry Division throughout the Normandy campaign from June through August 1944. After his capture near Falaise on August 21st, 1944, American intelligence officers from the Medical Intelligence Division conducted extensive debriefings over 3 weeks. Müller's testimony, preserved in interrogation report MI 14/352-08-44, dated September 12, 1944, provided the first systematic German medical analysis of .50 caliber wounds. The report runs at 87 pages, including detailed anatomical drawings and statistical analysis of 1,247 casualties treated by Müller's medical company. His opening statement established a clinical framework. In my 3 years as a military surgeon, 6 months in Poland, 18 months on the Eastern Front, 15 months in France, I have treated wounds from every weapon type currently employed in modern warfare. Rifle bullets of various calibers, machine gun fire from German, Soviet, British, and American weapons, artillery fragments from shells ranging from 75 millimeters to 203 millimeters, wounds from flamethrowers, phosphorus munitions, and high explosive bombs. I have performed approximately 3,400 surgical procedures under combat conditions. The .50 caliber wounds were categorically different from all previous experience. Müller's report included precise measurements. Entry wounds, 13 to 15 millimeters diameter, relatively small considering projectile size, suggesting minimal deformation at typical combat ranges of 400 to 800 meters. Exit wounds when they existed, 80 to 120 millimeters diameter, catastrophic tissue destruction. Temporary wound cavity, estimated at 10 to 15 times the bullet diameter based on surgical observations, meaning a 12.7 millimeters projectile created a temporary cavity measuring 127 to 190 millimeters, or 5 to 7.5 inches in diameter. The tissue destruction, Müller wrote, was so extensive that even immediate surgery could not repair the damage. Soldiers who survived the initial impact rarely survived evacuation. Those who reached field hospitals rarely survived surgery. Those who survived surgery rarely retained full function of affected limbs. I estimate, based on 3 months of continuous observation, that fewer than 30% of soldiers with torso wounds from .50 caliber fire survived more than 1 hour, even with immediate surgical intervention. Limb wounds almost invariably required amputation. There was simply too much destroyed tissue, too many shattered bone fragments, too much vascular damage to salvage the affected extremity. But Müller's report revealed something beyond physical trauma. Section 7, titled Psychological and Morale Effects, documented an unexpected pattern. German units that came under sustained .50 caliber fire, defined as continuous engagement lasting more than 10 minutes, suffered psychological casualties at rates significantly higher than units facing conventional small arms fire. Symptoms observed include refusal to leave cover positions even when ordered, physical trembling when .50 caliber fire is heard at distances exceeding 1 kilometer, inability to sleep due to anticipatory anxiety, and in extreme cases, complete psychological breakdown requiring evacuation from frontline service. The sound alone, that deep, rhythmic thunder, created conditioned responses similar to those observed in soldiers exposed to repeated artillery bombardment. Men who had survived Soviet artillery barrages on the Eastern Front and who maintained discipline under German 88 millimeters fire would refuse to leave cover when they heard American .50 caliber fire. This was not cowardice in the traditional sense. It was rational calculation. The weapon could not be survived through skill, tactical positioning, or rapid movement. Soldiers understood that exposure to .50 caliber fire meant death or catastrophic wounding as a matter of statistical probability, not individual competence. Survival was pure chance. If this kind of detailed military history analysis is your thing, the real documented accounts from German soldiers and medical officers who faced these weapons, the statistical evidence that changed warfare, the strategic implications that still shape modern doctrine. Hit that subscribe button now. It really helps us keep bringing you these deep dive historical documentaries based on primary sources. All right. Let's trace how a machine gun designed in 1917 became the most feared weapon in the American arsenal, and why Germany's best soldiers and commanders couldn't overcome what it represented. The psychological impact Müller documented had first manifested 18 months earlier, in circumstances German forces did not initially understand. November 8, 1942, 2 o'clock hours. Approximately 15 kilometers west of El Alamein, Egypt, Hauptmann Ernst Gunther Bode, 28 years old, from Hanover, commanded the 2nd Company, 1st Battalion, 115th Panzer Grenadier Regiment, 15th Panzer Division. Bode was a professional officer, commissioned in 1936, veteran of Poland and France, recipient of the Iron Cross First Class for actions during Operation Crusader in November 1941. His company consisted of 187 men, most veterans with at least 18 months desert experience. During the German withdrawal from El Alamein, the retreat beginning November 4th after General Bernard Montgomery's breakthrough, Bode's company received orders to conduct a night infiltration to delay British pursuit. Intelligence reported a British defensive position approximately 2 kilometers ahead, estimated strength 1 platoon, believed to be equipped with standard British weapons. Lee-Enfield rifles, Bren .303 light machine guns, possibly 1 or 2 Vickers .303 heavy machine guns. At 2 o'clock hours precisely, Bode's lead elements, 2 squads totaling 23 men under Feldwebel Otto Kraus, encountered the British position. Bode's after-action report, filed November 9, 1942, and preserved in the Bundesarchiv Militär Freiburg, described the engagement. At approximately 2 o'clock hours, Feldwebel Kraus's lead squads came within an estimated 200 meters of enemy positions. The British opened fire immediately. The volume and characteristics of fire were unlike any previous engagement with British forces. The sound was distinctly different, deeper, more resonant than Bren or Vickers fire. The rate of fire appeared slower than British light machine guns, but far more sustained. Tracer rounds, appearing at a ratio of 1:5, created visible streams of fire that never seemed to pause for barrel changes or ammunition reload. The engagement lasted approximately 8 minutes before I ordered withdrawal. Casualties: 11 killed, 17 wounded, 8 missing, total 36 men, or 19.3% of company strength, in 8 minutes of contact. When Bada's medical officer, Honorars Wilhelm Hartmann, examined casualties the following morning, he noted wound patterns that differed significantly from previous British weapons effects. His medical log, also preserved in Freiburg, contains detailed sketches. 3 casualties examined showed entry wounds consistent with large-caliber projectiles, larger than standard rifle or machine gun ammunition. Exit wounds were catastrophic. One soldier struck in thigh had the femur shattered into approximately 20 visible fragments with massive soft tissue destruction. Another soldier struck in the shoulder had the round travel through the torso cavity and exit near the opposite hip. He lived approximately 3 hours in severe pain before expiring from blood loss and shock. A third casualty struck in the upper arm lost the entire limb. The bone was not fractured but pulverized, the tissue not torn but liquefied. I have never seen such devastating wounds from small arms fire. Bada's battalion commander, Major Friedrich von dem Busche, initially hypothesized the British had deployed 20mm automatic cannons. Weapons known create such devastating effects. Only after German forces captured a British supply depot on November 11th did they discover the actual weapon, M2 Browning .50 caliber machine guns, American-made, supplied through Lend-Lease. The captured weapons were immediately sent to Waffenamt, German Army Weapons Agency, Technical Intelligence for evaluation. The report, dated December 3, 1942, provides a first German technical analysis. The weapon is of American manufacture, designated Browning machine gun, caliber .50 M2. Construction is surprisingly simple. A recoil-operated, air-cooled design using disintegrating link belt feed. Weighed approximately 38 kilograms for the weapon itself, 20 kilograms for the M3 tripod mount. Ammunition is .50 caliber BMG, Browning machine gun, measuring 12.7 by 99 millimeters. Muzzle velocity approximately 890 meters per second with standard ball ammunition. Projectile weight approximately 46 grams. The weapon's mechanical simplicity suggests ease of manufacture and maintenance. The air-cooled barrel design eliminates the complexity of water cooling systems used in our MG-08 and British Vickers guns. Belt-fed ammunition allows for sustained fire limited only by barrel heating and ammunition supply. Initial assessment: this is not a sophisticated weapon by German engineering standards. However, its reliability, sustained fire capability, and devastating projectile effects make it tactically significant. The British appear to have received substantial quantities through American Lend-Lease. Recommendation: German forces should be informed of weapon characteristics and appropriate countermeasures developed. But the Waffenamt report failed to grasp the strategic significance. This was not merely a new weapon type. It was a harbinger of American industrial warfare, at a scale Germany would prove incapable of matching. By March 1943, German intelligence had compiled reports of M2 Browning employment from multiple North African engagements. The weapon appeared mounted on British trucks, armored cars, and anti-aircraft vehicles. Each position seemed to have thousands of rounds of ammunition, quantities that would have supplied an entire German machine gun company for weeks. Oberst Colonel Klaus von Stauffenberg, then serving as operations officer for 10th Panzer Division, and later famous for his role in the July 20th, 1944 plot against Hitler, wrote in a March 15th, 1943 intelligence summary: "The most significant development in British defensive tactics is not tactical innovation, but material superiority. The Americans are supplying heavy machine guns in quantities that allow British forces to employ them as standard offensive weapons rather than specialized equipment. The .50 caliber weapon fires a projectile with approximately twice the muzzle energy of our standard 7.92 millimeters machine gun ammunition. The effects on personnel are catastrophic. Moreover, the weapon can engage light armored vehicles at ranges exceeding 1,000 meters. British units have adapted their defensive doctrine to incorporate these weapons systematically. We can expect to encounter them in every engagement going forward." Von Stauffenberg was correct, but neither he nor any German officer yet understood that the weapons encountered in North Africa represented a tiny fraction of American production. The United States would manufacture 1,933,985 M2 Browning machine guns. During the war, the few hundred supplied to British forces in North Africa were merely the beginning. The real education would come from the air. September 6, 1943, 10:23 hours, 8,000 meters above Stuttgart, Germany. Lieutenant Heinrich Wormhela, 24 years old from Munich, rolled his Focke-Wulf 190A-5 into an attack dive. Below, 388 B-17 flying fortresses approached Stuttgart's industrial district in the first major American daylight raid on the city. Wormhela was an ace, 93 confirmed victories, Knight's Cross recipient, veteran of the Battle of Britain, Eastern Front operations, and Mediterranean combat. His aircraft, FW-190 work number 410123, mounted 420mm MG-151/20 cannons with 250 rounds each and two 13mm MG-131 machine guns with 475 rounds each. He was absolutely confident in his abilities and his aircraft. His Jagdgeschwader 27 had received detailed intelligence briefings about American heavy bombers. The B-17 carried heavy defensive armament. Intelligence estimated perhaps 6 to 8 machine guns total. German pilots who had engaged V-17s over France reported the defensive fire as significant but manageable with proper attack tactics. At 10:24 hours, Wormhela began his attack run from 8,000 meters, diving at approximately 45 degrees, airspeed building through 500 kilometers per hour. His plan, standard doctrine for experienced pilots, was to close to 400 meters, fire a 3-second burst from all cannons and machine guns, then break away before the bombers could respond effectively. At approximately 800 meters range, the entire bomber formation opened fire. Wormhela's combat report, filed 2 hours later at Echterdingen airfield, described what happened. At approximately 800 meters, I observed what appeared to be solid streams of tracer fire emanating from every bomber in my field of vision. The density of fire was unlike anything encountered in previous engagements. The tracers, appearing at regular intervals, suggesting every fifth round, created what looked like continuous lines of light rather than individual projectiles. The sound, audible even over engine and slipstream noise, was distinctive, a deep, rhythmic thunder far different from normal machine gun fire. At approximately 650 meters, my aircraft was struck multiple times in rapid succession. I felt at least 3 distinct impacts within perhaps 2 seconds. The aircraft began violent vibration. I immediately broke left in Dove, abandoning the attack run. Control response was severely degraded. The left aileron responded sluggishly. Engine oil pressure began dropping rapidly. Hydraulic pressure fell to 0 within 10 seconds. The armored glass windscreen directly in front of my head showed an impact point. The round did not penetrate but created a spider web of cracks that severely impaired forward visibility. Wormhela managed to coax his crippled FW-190 back to Boblingen Auxiliary Airfield 40 kilometers south, landing without hydraulics, with minimal aileron control, and with his engine trailing smoke. Average experience level of the 9 lost pilots, 47 combat missions each. Total combined victories, 342. This was a replaceable experience. The veteran cadre that had survived 3 years of war and understood their aircraft and tactics intimately. The Americans lost 45 B-17s on the Stuttgart raid, an 11.6% loss rate, considered unsustainable for long-term operations. But the Luftwaffe lost something it could never replace: experienced pilots who had trained for years and survived dozens of combat missions. What Wormhela and surviving pilots did not yet fully comprehend, what German intelligence was only beginning to understand, was a mathematics of what they had encountered. A formation of 36 bombers, standard combat box formation, meant 468 heavy machine guns firing the same .50 caliber cartridge effective to 1,830 meters. Combined theoretical rate of fire, approximately 6,000 rounds per minute if all guns fired simultaneously. Practical rate of fire accounting for gunner reaction time, firing discipline, and ammunition conservation, approximately 3,500 to 4,000 rounds per minute sustained. What Allied planners called zones of mutual support, overlapping fields of fire between aircraft and formation. What German pilots experienced as walls of steel that no fighter could safely penetrate. The numbers grew more daunting in analysis. Each B-17G carried between 5,000 and 7,000 rounds of .50 caliber ammunition, distributed across the 13 gun positions according to expected consumption rates and space limitations. Some crews, violating regulations but with tacit approval from commanders, stuffed additional ammunition cans wherever space allowed. Average ammunition load, 6,200 rounds per aircraft. A 36-aircraft formation carried approximately 223,200 rounds of .50 caliber ammunition. At the conservative sustained fire rate of 3,500 rounds per minute, a formation could maintain continuous defensive fire for approximately 64 minutes before exhausting ammunition, longer than any single bomber mission's exposure, the fighter attack. But the truly devastating aspect, the element German pilots and engineers found most incomprehensible, was reliability. Lieutenant Wolfgang Fischer, 26 years old from Berlin, flew Bf-109G, 6 fighters with Jägerschwitter 88, defending the Reich. He survived 127 combat missions between July 1943 and July 1944, when he was shot down over Hamburg by AP-51 Mustang. After capture and post-war repatriation, Fischer provided extensive testimony to the U.S. Strategic Bombing Survey in March 1946. His statement, preserved in the National Archives, runs to 47 pages. The most relevant section addresses German weapon reliability compared to American systems. Our Bf-109G6 carried one Motorkanone 20mm MG-151/20 cannon, firing through propeller hub, and two 13mm MG-131 machine guns mounted above the engine cowling, synchronized to fire through propeller arc. Ammunition capacity, 150 rounds of cannon, 300 rounds per machine gun, 600 rounds total for the cowl guns. In combat, this provided perhaps 12 to 15 seconds of firing time before ammunition exhaustion. We were trained to aim with extreme care, fire in short, precise bursts of 1 to 2 seconds, and make every round count. But the greater limitation was not ammunition, it was reliability. The 20mm MG-151-20 was relatively reliable by German standards. I would estimate perhaps one malfunction every 10 to 15 firing sequences, a rate we considered acceptable. The 30mm Malawian Quach's 108 cannon, which equipped later Bf-109 variants and some FW-190s, was far less reliable. It jammed frequently, perhaps one firing sequence in 3 or 4. The weapon had excellent destructive power. 3 or 4 hits could destroy AB-17, but the jamming rate made it nearly useless in combat. The 13mm MG-131 machine guns were moderately reliable but required careful maintenance. At high altitude, where temperatures dropped to minus 40 degrees Celsius, these weapons would malfunction, if not perfectly maintained. I personally experienced cannon or machine gun malfunctions on approximately 40 of my 127 combat missions, a 31.5% failure rate. Sometimes a malfunction could be cleared by cycling the charging handle. Often it could not, and the weapon remained inoperative for the remainder of the mission. We accepted this as normal. Our weapons required skilled maintenance, careful handling, and proper preparation. They were sophisticated mechanisms that demanded expertise. The American .50 caliber machine gun represented a completely different philosophy. In 127 combat missions against American heavy bombers and fighters, I observed countless engagements in defensive fire. I personally attacked American bomber formations 73 times. I witnessed hundreds of other German fighters engaging American aircraft. I never, not once in 127 missions, observed an American .50 caliber machine gun cease firing due to mechanical malfunction. I saw bombers with obvious battle damage, engines smoking, pieces of fuselage torn away, entire sections of tail surfaces missing, and their .50 caliber guns would still be firing. I witnessed gunner performing barrel changes during combat, a 30 to 45 second procedure, and the weapon would resume firing immediately. I saw American bombers at altitudes exceeding 8,000 meters, where temperatures were minus 40 degrees or colder, maintaining continuous fire for the entire duration of our attack runs, 5 to 10 minutes of sustained firing without malfunction. The reliability was incomprehensible to German pilots who had been trained that all automatic weapons required careful fire discipline and maintenance to function properly. The Americans seemed to have no such limitations. They fired long bursts, 20, 30, even 50-round bursts. They fired continuously until we broke off attacks. They functioned in all conditions at all altitudes without apparent maintenance issues. This reliability, more than raw firepower, was what made American bomber defensive fire so devastating. We could plan tactics around expected weapon malfunctions, attack timing, breakaway maneuvers, second pass approaches. But if the weapons never malfunctioned, our tactics had no advantage. Even after long-range P-51 Mustangs began accompanying bombers deep into Germany in early 1944, bomber defensive fire continued inflicting 30% to 40% of total Luftwaffe fighter losses on daylight missions to the end of the war. The psychological damage among Luftwaffe fighter pilots was documented in unit war diaries and personal accounts. By late 1943, veteran pilots were providing dire warnings to new pilots. Never close to less than 400 meters. Their guns are effective well beyond that range. Never attack from directly astern. Tail guns will hit you before you can fire effectively. Never make more than one pass. They will track your pattern and adjust fire. Never assume a damaged bomber is defenseless. Their guns function regardless of aircraft damage. The bombers are fortresses not because of their armor, but because of their .50 caliber machine guns. Nothing worked consistently. American gunners had overlapping fields of fire designed into the bomber's layout. Every approach angle brought attackers under fire from multiple gun positions. The combat box formations, 18 to 21 aircraft in three-dimensional space, maximized overlapping defensive fire between aircraft. There was no safe approach. By mid-1944, Luftwaffe fighter effectiveness against American daylight raids had effectively collapsed. Loss rates were unsustainable, averaging 25% to 40% per mission. Experienced pilots were gone, killed, wounded, or worn down by cumulative stress. Green replacement pilots rushed through truncated training programs, last an average of 7 combat missions before being shot down. The .50 caliber had not achieved this alone. American fighter escorts, especially the long-range P-51 Mustang, and overwhelming numerical superiority played major roles. But bomber defensive firepower made every attack costly, dangerous, and psychologically exhausting, grinding down German fighter strength through cumulative attrition that could not be replaced. Major Heinrich Bahr, 28 years old from Leipzig, survived the war as one of Germany's highest-scoring aces, 220 confirmed victories. He had flown on every front. France 1940, Battle of Britain, Eastern Front Mediterranean, Defense of the Reich. In post-war interviews conducted in 1947, Bahr provided comparative analysis. The American P-47 Thunderbolt carried 8.50 caliber machine guns, 4 in each wing, with approximately 425 rounds per gun. Total ammunition, 3,400 rounds. This gave them nearly 50 seconds of continuous firing time, more than 3 times our endurance. They did not need to aim with our precision. They could fire long bursts, walk their fire onto targets, saturate areas with bullets, and guarantee hits through sheer volume rather than accuracy. In air-to-air combat, this gave them enormous advantages. They could open fire at 600 meters, far beyond effective range, and walk their fire toward us using tracers as aiming references. By the time their tracers reached us, they had adjusted aim, and the later rounds in the burst would hit. We had to wait until 300 meters to guarantee hits with our cannons, and by then we were inside range where American pilots could hit us with volume fire. But the real difference was reliability. Our cannons jammed frequently, perhaps 1 attack in 3. American pilots learned this. If they survived our first burst, we might not get a second chance before our weapons failed. I shot down 7 P-47s during the war. I saw many more damage and trailing smoke. But I never, not once, saw a P-47's gun stop firing due to mechanical failure. They would fire until ammunition was completely exhausted, which, given their ammunition capacity and firing doctrine, rarely occurred in a single engagement. The air war over Germany became, by 1944, a mathematical equation German pilots could not solve. American bombers with 13.50 caliber guns each, flying in mutually supporting formations, escorted by fighters with 8.50 caliber guns each, achieved local air superiority that made intercepts prohibitively costly. German forces adapted by moving primarily at night and in bad weather, conditions limiting American air operations. But this adaptation came at enormous cost to operational tempo, logistics, and ultimately battlefield effectiveness. The .50 caliber had proven its worth in the air. It would prove even more devastating on the ground. June 6, 1944, 16:30 hours. Approximately 8 kilometers southeast of Caen, Normandy, France. Oberstleutnant Hans von Luck, 33 years old from Flensburg, commanded the 1st Battalion, 125th Panzer Grenadier Regiment, 21st Panzer Division, the only German armored division close enough to the invasion beaches to counterattack on D-Day itself. Von Luck was a professional officer of the highest caliber, Commissioned 1929, veteran of Poland, France, and North Africa under Rommel, recipient of the Knight's Cross with oak leaves, author of what will become one of the most respected German memoirs of the war, Panzer Commander, published 1989, English translation 1991. His battalion, approximately 750 men with attached armor and artillery, spent D-Day afternoon attempting to reach the invasion beaches through British defensive positions. What von Luck discovered in the Norman hedgerows would fundamentally alter his understanding of modern warfare. His memoir contains a detailed account of an engagement on June 7, 1944. At approximately 11:30 hours on June 7th, I observed an American armored column moving through Bocage country south of Ken, or more precisely, what I initially assumed was an armored column. As they drew closer, I realized this was a mixed formation. Tanks, tank destroyers, half-tracks, trucks, and jeeps, perhaps 40 to 50 vehicles in all. What struck me immediately, what seemed almost incomprehensible, was the sheer number of heavy machine guns. I counted carefully. At least 35 of these vehicles mounted what appeared to be .50 caliber machine guns on visible pintle mounts, turret rings, or specialized mounts. They were not moving tactically. No scouts forward, no security flanks. They simply drove down the road in column formation, as if on peacetime maneuvers. I had Panzer IVs teams positioned in excellent ambush sites approximately 150 meters from the road. Standard doctrine that had proven effective against British and Soviet columns allowed the lead elements to pass, destroy the lead and trail vehicles with Panzer IVs, trap the column, then systematically destroy trapped vehicles with additional Panzer IV shots and MG-42 fire. When my lead Panzer IV team engaged the column, successfully destroying the lead vehicle, a Sherman tank, the volume of return fire was incomprehensible. Every American vehicle that had a .50 caliber machine gun opened fire simultaneously, not aimed fire at identified targets. They simply traversed their weapons toward the general direction of the Panzer IV's launch and began firing continuously. The volume was so intense that my men could not raise their heads to fire second shots. The .50 caliber rounds were cutting through hedgerow vegetation, small trees, brush, and branches that had always provided adequate concealment. I watched through binoculars as .50 caliber fire literally shredded a hedgerow section, cutting down vegetation that should have provided cover. The Americans did not dismount. They did not take defensive positions. They simply drove forward while maintaining continuous fire from every weapon. My men retreated without achieving any additional hits on American vehicles. I had 5 casualties, 2 killed, 3 wounded. The Americans had 1 disabled tank, which they towed away with a recovery vehicle that arrived within 10 minutes. The tactical exchange favored them completely, achieved not through superior tactics or training, but through sheer volume of fire from weapons that appear to have unlimited ammunition. Von Luck's observation identified the key difference in American doctrine, universal heavy machine gun coverage. American force structure, by mid-1944, placed .50 caliber machine guns on virtually every combat vehicle and in every combat unit. Sherman M4 medium tank, 1.50 caliber M2HB on turret roof pintle mount, flexible mount operated by tank commander. M10 tank destroyer, 1.50 caliber M2HB on turret ring mount. M18 Hellcat tank destroyer, 1.50 caliber M2HB on turret ring mount. M8 Greyhound armor car, 1.50 caliber M2HB on turret ring mount. M3 half-track, 1.50 caliber M2HB on ring mount behind cab. Jeep, 1.50 caliber M2HB on pedestal mount, field modification, increasingly common by mid-1944. Infantry units, organic .50 caliber machine gun sections at battalion level, typically 4 guns per battalion. Anti-aircraft units, M16 multiple gun motor carriage, quad .50 caliber, and M45 quad mount. The result, an American armored division advancing through France might have 400 to 600 .50 caliber machine guns distributed across its force structure, not as primary armament, but as secondary weapons for air defense and infantry suppression. German doctrine, by contrast, organized around a machine gun, but at squad level with lighter weapons. The MG-34 and its successor, the MG-42, were excellent weapons. The MG-42 remains one of the finest machine gun designs ever created, with its 200 rounds per minute rate of fire earning it the nickname Hitler's Buzzsaw from Allied soldiers. German squads carried 1,800 rounds of 7.92 millimeters ammunition per MG-42 and organized tactics around supporting machine gun crew. The concept, Einheitsmaschinengewehr or universal machine gun, was tactically sound. NATO would later adopt this philosophy. But Germans had never imagined the scale of American .50 caliber employment. A single American armor company advancing through Normandy might have more heavy machine guns than an entire German battalion possessed light and heavy machine guns combined. American supply convoys employed documented tactics that German intelligence identified but could never effectively counter. Gefreiter Otto Carius, 21 years old from Zweibrücken, served as a Panzer gunner in the 352nd Infantry Division. He survived the Normandy campaign and was captured near Falaise on August 19, 1944. His interrogation report, conducted August 22nd to 24th by Allied intelligence, included detailed descriptions of anti-convoy tactics. In the first weeks after the invasion, our company positioned ambush teams, typically 4 or 5 men with 2 Panzerfaust and 1 MG-42, along roads where American supply convoys traveled frequently. Our doctrine was sound, developed through years of combat experience on the Eastern Front. The tactic: wait for a convoy to enter the kill zone, destroy the lead and trail vehicles with Panzerfaust to trap the column, then systematically destroy trapped vehicles with additional Panzerfaust shots, while MG-42 fire suppressed any attempt to escape. This doctrine had proven effective against British convoys in North Africa and Soviet convoys in Russia. We could typically destroy 60% to 80% of a trapped convoy's vehicles. Against the Americans, it failed completely and catastrophically. Their convoys had an incredible number of .50 caliber machine guns. We observed that American vehicles alternated their weapon orientations. Vehicles on the right side of the convoy would train their weapons to the right. Vehicles on the left side would train left. When ambushed, the entire convoy would erupt in sustained fire covering both flanks simultaneously, creating intersecting fields of fire. This was not improvised or accidental. This was systematic doctrine, practiced and executed with mechanical precision. When we initiated our first ambush by destroying the lead vehicle with Panzerfaust, the return fire was immediate and overwhelming. We destroyed one truck, just one vehicle. Then their .50 caliber machine guns from perhaps 20 or 30 vehicles opened fire on our position simultaneously. We learned very quickly that trees did not provide adequate cover. The .50 caliber rounds would cut through tree trunks 15 to 20 centimeters in diameter. We measured this after engagements. Stone walls that should have stopped rifle fire and even machine gun fire were penetrated by .50 caliber projectiles. Men died behind cover that had protected German soldiers throughout the war. After losing 3 complete ambush teams in 1 week, 17 men killed, 11 wounded, our company commander ordered us to attack only isolated vehicles, never convoys. But isolated vehicles were rare. The Americans moved in strength precisely because they understood we could not effectively attack their convoys. The phenomenon Carius described, alternating weapon orientation and convoy formation, was formalized American doctrine, detailed in Field Manual 21-75, Combat Training of the Individual Soldier and Patrolling, 1944 edition, and FM 25-10, Motor Transport, 1942 edition, revised 1944. The relevant passage from FM 25-10, Section 4, Paragraph 47. In hostile territory, convoy security requires that all vehicles mounting .50 caliber or .30 caliber machine guns maintain constant readiness. Weapons will be oriented alternately to right and left flanks in sequence. First vehicle right, second vehicle left, third vehicle right, continuing throughout the column. This provides mutual coverage of both flanks and ensures that ambush from either flank will face immediate and overwhelming return fire from approximately 50% of convoy weapons. American convoy commanders received specific tables of organization dictating weapon placement. A standard 50-vehicle supply convoy would typically include 15 to 20 vehicles mounting .50 caliber machine guns, all weapons positioned per alternating orientation, doctrine ammunition loads of 500 to 1,000 rounds per gun, ready ammunition in vehicle-mounted containers, additional ammunition in convoy supply trucks. The result: a 50-vehicle American convoy might deliver 15,000 to 20,000 rounds of .50 caliber fire within the first minute of an ambush, fire directed simultaneously at both flanks regardless of which side initiated the ambush. German forces could not match this firepower density. A German supply convoy of similar size would typically have 2 to 4 vehicles mounting MG-34 or MG-42 machine guns, 7.92 millimeters. Perhaps one vehicle mounting a 20 millimeters flat gun if available. No formal doctrine for mutual support fire-limited ammunition loads due to supply shortages. American columns also employed reconnaissance by fire, firing .50 caliber machine guns continuously into any suspicious terrain as they advanced. This tactic, alien to German doctrine emphasizing ammunition conservation, proved devastatingly effective. Unteroffizier Franz Weber, 27 years old from Stuttgart, commanded an MG-42 squad in the 17th SS Panzergrenadier Division. He survived the Falaise Pocket and was captured by Canadian forces on August 21, 1944. His debriefing, conducted August 23rd to 25th, included detailed observations. Against the Russians, we face human wave attacks, mass infantry assaults with minimal fire support, relying on overwhelming numbers. Terrifying in scale, but we understood the tactics. We could prepare positions, establish fields of fire, use our superior training and weapons to inflict disproportionate casualties. Against the British in Normandy, we faced methodical, carefully planned advances with excellent coordination between infantry, armor, and artillery. Cautious, professional, skilled. We could respect that kind of warfare even as we fought against it. Against the Americans, we faced something entirely different. Something that seemed wasteful, even irrational, until we understood its purpose. They shot at everything, not aimed fire at identified targets, but continuous fire at any terrain feature that could potentially conceal troops. Tree lines received sustained bursts every 50 meters as they advanced. Farm buildings received fire whether they appeared occupied or empty. Stone walls, hedgerows, any depression in the ground, any area that offered potential cover. If we were hidden in a position, this continuous fire would either A. Suppress us, making return fire impossible, or B. Provoke us into returning fire, which would reveal our positions to their artillery and air support. Either way, they maintained initiative and we lost it. During one 3-day period in July 1944, I recorded this carefully in my notebook. My 8-man squad fired approximately 4,000 rounds total from our MG-42. We were conserving ammunition carefully because resupply was uncertain and often delayed. An American platoon operating in the same sector, I observed them through binoculars and estimated their ammunition expenditure based on fire duration and rate. Fired what I estimated was 15,000 to 20,000 rounds from their machine guns in the same 3-day period. 5 times as much ammunition. But it worked. We could not move during daylight hours. We could not reposition our weapon. We could not conduct local counterattacks. We were pinned by continuous fire from weapons that never seemed to run out of ammunition. After 2 weeks fighting Americans in the bocage, my men would not leave covered positions during daylight. Not cowardice. These were veterans who had fought at Kursk on the Eastern Front, who had faced Soviet tank attacks and artillery barrages. It was rational calculation. Movement during daylight meant exposure. Exposure meant coming under .50 caliber fire, and that meant death or catastrophic wounding. Survival was not a matter of tactical skill or courage. It was pure mathematical probability, and the mathematics favored the side that could fire 100 rounds to kill one enemy. The M16 multiple gun motor carriage represented American firepower philosophy at its most extreme manifestation. The M16 was an M3 half-track mounting 4.50 caliber M2 HP machine guns in a powered Maxim M45 turret. Originally designed for anti-aircraft defense against low-flying aircraft, the turret could traverse 360 degrees and elevate from -10 degrees to +90 degrees, with power-assisted controls allowing rapid target tracking. Combined rate of fire, approximately 2,200 rounds per minute, 550 rounds per minute per gun times 4 guns. That is 36.7 rounds per second. Ammunition capacity, 2,000 rounds ready to fire in the turret, 500 rounds per gun in 200-round ammunition chests, with additional ammunition stored in the vehicle hull. American soldiers called it the meat chopper or the Kraut mower. Both names were earned through demonstrated effectiveness. By late 1944, as the Luftwaffe had been largely defeated over Western Europe, American anti-aircraft units found themselves repurposed for ground support operations. The M16 proved devastatingly effective against German infantry and light vehicles. Official reports from the 473rd AAA Anti-Aircraft Artillery Battalion, preserved in the National Archives, document this transition. The M16 MGMC has proven highly effective in ground support role. Primary anti-aircraft mission has become secondary due to absence of enemy air activity. Battalion M16s have been attached to infantry and armored units for suppression fire and area denial operations. Effectiveness against personnel targets is exceptional. The high rate of fire and power-assisted traverse allow engagement of dispersed targets across wide frontage. A single M16 can suppress an area measuring approximately 200 meters wide by 100 meters deep with sustained fire lasting 2 to 3 minutes, expending approximately 4,000 to 6,000 rounds. German infantry units objected to M16 fire typically break and retreat or surrender rather than attempting to hold positions. Obergefreiter Helmut Schreiber, 23 years old from Dresden, survived an M16 engagement near Bastogne on December 22, 1944, during the Battle of the Bulge. Evacuated to a German field hospital with severe leg wounds, he was captured when American forces overran the hospital on December 26. His medical records and subsequent interrogation provided one of the most detailed German accounts of being under M16 fire. His testimony, given December 28, 1944. Our company, approximately 120 men from the 26th Volksgrenadier Division, received orders to attack an American supply depot near a crossroads west of Bastogne. Intelligence reported the depot defended by logistics troops, not combat infantry. We expected light resistance. We advanced in 3 platoons across open ground at dusk, approximately 200 meters from the American positions, when we heard diesel engines starting. I assumed they were attempting to evacuate trucks before we overran the depot. Then I saw the vehicle, a half-track with what appeared to be 4 machine guns mounted in a turret. The turret rotated toward us, smooth, fast, obviously powered by motor, and opened fire. I cannot adequately describe what happened next. The sound was like heavy cloth being torn, but magnified 100 times and continuous, never stopping for even a fraction of a second. The entire front rank of our formation, approximately 40 men advancing in line, simply disappeared. Not fell down. Disappeared into red mist. The volume of fire was so dense that men were struck multiple times before they could even begin to fall. I saw soldiers literally cut in half by the sustained fire. The tracers, every 5th round, created what looked like 4 solid beams of light sweeping horizontally across our company, like a gigantic broom. I threw myself into a shallow depression in the ground, barely 20 centimeters deep, just a small dip in the terrain. The fire continued for what felt like hours, but was probably 60 to 90 seconds. I could feel the impacts in the ground near my head. Dirt and debris showered over me continuously. I heard men screaming, short screams that cut off suddenly. When the fire finally stopped, I looked up. I counted 11 men still moving from my entire platoon of 38 soldiers. The wounded, and there were many, had not been hit once or twice. They had been hit 5, 10, 15 times. Most died within minutes from blood loss. The medical officer who treated me later at the field hospital said he had never seen wounds like those. Men with 5 or 6 separate wound channels, bones shattered into fragments, tissue destruction so massive that surgery was impossible. You cannot stop bleeding from 6.50 caliber wounds simultaneously. The human body does not contain enough blood. The Battle of the Bulge, Germany's last major offensive in the West, December 16, 1944, to January 25, 1945, would demonstrate the cumulative effect of American .50 caliber superiority even more dramatically. But before examining that campaign, the air dimension requires one final assessment. The P-47 Thunderbolt. The Republic P-47 Thunderbolt, nicknamed the Jug by American pilots due to its distinctive thick fuselage, represented .50 caliber firepower from the air at its most concentrated. The P-47D, the most common variant, carried 8 M2 Browning .50 caliber machine guns, 4 in each wing, each gun loaded with approximately 425 rounds. Total ammunition capacity, 3,400 rounds. Combined rate of fire, 4,400 rounds per minute, 550 rounds per minute per gun times 8 guns. To contextualize this firepower, one P-47 Thunderbolt could deliver more rounds in 1 minute than an entire German infantry company. Approximately 140 men with rifles, submachine guns, and machine guns could fire in the same period. A flight of 4 P-47s, standard tactical formation, meant 32.50 caliber machine, guns delivering 17,600 rounds per minute. That is 293 rounds per second across the flight. German ground forces learned to recognize the P-47's distinctive silhouette and the sound that preceded death. Deep, rumbling thunder building in intensity as the aircraft dove toward target, followed by the staccato roar of 8 machine guns firing simultaneously. A standard strafing run followed specific pattern. Flight leader identifies target. Convoy, troop concentration, artillery position, railway. Leader begins dive from 3,000 to 4,000 meters altitude. Other 3 aircraft follow in trail. Space 10 to 15 seconds apart. Each pilot opens fire at 600 to 800 meters range. Pilot continues firing through dive. Walking fire across target area. Pull out at 300 to 500 meters altitude. Climb back to altitude. Assess damage. Conduct second pass if necessary. Total engagement time, 30 to 40 seconds from first aircraft opening fire to last aircraft completing run. Ammunition expended per pass, 500 to 800 rounds per aircraft, depending on target size and density. Rounds delivered to target area during single pass by 4 aircraft flight. 2,000 to 3,000 .50 caliber projectiles into an area measuring approximately 100 meters by 50 meters. Survivors consistently describe the effect as a horizontal rainstorm of metal that left nothing intact. Obergefreiter Johann Becker, 25 years old, from Cologne, served as supply sergeant in the 2nd SS Panzer Division. He survived multiple strafing attacks during the retreat from Normandy in August 1944. His account, given during interrogation August 27, 1944. You hear the engines first, deep rumble growing louder. You have perhaps 5 seconds from when you first hear the sound to when they open fire. By the time you look up to identify the aircraft, they are already firing. You can see the muzzle flashes twinkling along the wings like Christmas lights. Then you see the tracers, lines of light that seem to float toward you slowly, but arrive instantly. The bullets hit everything simultaneously: road, vehicles, men, trees. There is no sequence that allows you to anticipate where fire will strike next. It is simply everywhere at once. The effect on vehicles is catastrophic. Metal tears like paper. Trucks catch fire immediately. Fuel tanks, cargo, everything ignites. I watched a truck hit by strafing fire disintegrate in perhaps 3 seconds, not gradually, but suddenly, as if it had exploded. Only scattered burning pieces remained. The effect on men in the open is not something I can describe properly. They simply come apart. I learned very quickly to abandon vehicles the instant I heard aircraft engines. Better to lose the vehicle than the vehicle and crew. Some men try to hide under vehicles, thinking the metal would provide protection. The .50 caliber rounds would penetrate the vehicle from above, ricochet inside the engine compartment and undercarriage, and kill everyone sheltering beneath. One strafing attack hit a supply truck with 6 men hiding under it. All 6 were killed by ricochets and fragments. Not one was struck directly by the rounds that killed them. The only relatively safe action was to run. Sprint away from any vehicle or equipment that might attract fire. Throw yourself into the deepest depression you could find. Press your face into dirt and pray the pilots did not see you. Even then, survival was luck. I saw men lying flat in ditches struck by rounds that had already penetrated vehicles or ricocheted off stone walls and paved roads. The bullets were still lethal after passing through metal and concrete. After 2 weeks in Normandy, our division would not move during daylight under any circumstances. Supplies came only at night. Reinforcements moved only at night. Artillery repositioned only at night. Any vehicle movement during daylight drew immediate air attack within 15 to 20 minutes. The Americans had forward air controllers with radios who could summon aircraft with incredible speed. We became a nocturnal army because American aircraft owned the daylight, and those .50 caliber guns killed everything that moved. The P-47 proved particularly effective in armed reconnaissance missions, free-arranging hunter-killer patrols over assigned sectors. Rather than striking predetermined objectives from intelligence reports, flights afford 8 P-47s would patrol over German-held territory, looking for targets of opportunity. Any German vehicle moving during daylight risked attack. Any troop column. Any supply convoy. Any artillery position that revealed itself by firing. Any railway locomotive. Any command post identified by increased vehicle presence. For separate targets engaged in a single 90-minute mission with the same 8.50 caliber machine guns that American factories produced by the hundreds of thousands, supplied with ammunition that American industry produced by the billions of rounds. Major Heinrich Bahr, the Luftwaffe ace with 220 victories, provided this assessment in his 1947 testimony. In ground attack role, the P-47 was even more devastating than in air-to-air combat. The pilot could approach at high speed, deliver massive firepower, and escape before effective ground fire could be organized. The ammunition capacity meant they could engage multiple targets. I witnessed P-47s attacking a column, then circling back to attack a second column, then attacking a railway station, all in the same sortie. Our ground forces learned to move only at night and in bad weather, conditions that limited American air operations. But this adaptation came at enormous cost. Supplies that should have moved 100 kilometers in 3 hours required 12 to 18 hours when restricted to night movement. Reinforcements that should have reached the front within 24 hours required 3 or 4 days. Artillery that needed to reposition after firing missions found themselves trapped, vulnerable to air attack if they moved during daylight, vulnerable to American counter-battery fire if they remained stationary. By mid-1944, American air supremacy was complete. Response time from forward air controllers calling for strikes to P-47s arriving on target, 15 to 20 minutes. German ground forces operated under constant threat of air attack with no possibility of fighter protection. The Luftwaffe had ceased to exist as an effective force over Western Europe. The combination of ground-mounted and air-delivered .50 caliber fire created comprehensive suppression across the entire battlefield depth. German units could not move safely in daylight because of strafing. They could not move safely at night because American ground forces used reconnaissance by fire to interdict roads. They could not concentrate for counterattacks because American doctrine called for immediate engagement of any identified German formation with all available firepower. This reality broke German combat effectiveness in the West. After the war, German military historians and former Wehrmacht officers provided remarkably consistent analyses in manuscripts written for the United States Army Historical Division. General Lieutenant Fritz Bayerlein, who survived in 1970, summarized a lesson in his contributions to the U.S. Army's official history. The Americans did not build the best heavy machine gun by German engineering standards. They built something far more effective, the most reliable heavy machine gun, produced in quantities we could never match, supplied with unlimited ammunition from an industrial base we could never threaten, employed by every unit at every level according to doctrine that accepted material expenditure as the price of victory. The weapon itself was merely adequate. It did not have the high rate of fire of our MG-42. It did not have the destructive power of our 20mm cannons. It was heavy and cumbersome compared to our general-purpose machine guns. But the system that supported the M2 Browning was unbeatable. 2 million machine guns produced during the war. 9 billion rounds of ammunition manufactured. Supply lines that delivered ammunition to frontline units faster than they could expend it. Maintenance procedures so simple that minimally trained soldiers could perform field repairs. Doctrine calling for continuous fire rather than aimed bursts. That system defeated Germany. We had superior tanks. We had superior machine guns in the MG-42. We had superior tactical training. We had combat experience gained in 5 years of war on multiple fronts. None of this mattered. The Americans had enough material resources to make mistakes and still win. They did not need to be brilliant tacticians. They needed to be competent and well supplied. They were both, and that was sufficient. The hatred was never for the machine gun itself. It was for what the machine gun represented. The overwhelming industrial-minded nation that could afford to place a heavy machine gun on every vehicle, supply it with unlimited ammunition, and replace losses faster than they occurred. A nation that valued reliability over sophistication, sustainability over perfection, adequate technology with superior systems over superior technology with inadequate systems. In Dietrich's notebook, the final entry, dated May 7, 1945, the day Germany surrendered, reads, "We were told Americans were weak, divided, incapable of sustained warfare. Every engagement proved this was a lie. They outproduced us, outsupplied us, outlasted us. Their .50 caliber machine gun, a weapon from 1933 that our intelligence dismissed as crude, became the symbol of our defeat. Not because it was sophisticated, but because it worked. Every time, in all conditions, with unlimited ammunition. We sent horses against their trucks, rifles against their automatic weapons, tactical excellence against their unlimited resources. We lost not on the battlefield, but in the factories. The Americans did not outfight us. They outproduced us. And their .50 caliber machine gun proved it, one devastating round at a time,